Hi, Rashmi. This is Michael from BetterTOEFLScores.com, and you signed up for a TOEFL Skype lesson. So during this lesson, it'll be two parts. So first of all, I'm going to grade the 4 speaking tasks that you sent me by email. I will also grade and provide feedback on the 2 independent writing tasks that you sent me. And once I've done that, then I'm going to email you a YouTube video giving you comments on those 4 speaking and 2 writing tasks. Then we meet for an hour and we'll have a TOEFL Skype lesson so I can help you improve your weak points. Finally, you'll have 1 month unlimited access to my online TOEFL course. So while you're using my online course for that month, you can continue to send me speaking and writing practice every 24 hours, and I will grade and comment on those speaking and writing practice tests. Let's listen to the first speaking practice test that you sent me, and I'm going to listen to the whole thing one time without making any comments, and as I'm listening to it, I have these adjusted rubrics, as you can see right here, and I'm going to figure out where your score is based on your delivery, language use, and topic development performance. And let's see how you did. This is an adapted rubric that I use that helps my online students kind of understand what their score is and why. Okay, here we go.
Coworkers can be your best friends forever because they understand you in and out. They share the same workplace with you. They know the pressures of the work.
Okay, I wish you'd made this louder. It needs to be much, much louder than this. Let me see if I can figure this out. Yeah, okay, let's go back.
They help you with the work. Example is when you have some issues going on with your work, they'll try to sort it out. They'll make you laugh and they make you headstrong. The second reason is when you are in some issues, they know it right away and they help you support either it is a professional or personal issue. They try to make everything good and they try to solve it. They are always by your side. 8 hours is a very long time to stay together. Coworkers can be
Okay. All right, let's listen to it one more time. So my first impression, based on your performance here, I'm going to put you maybe between 2.5 and 3. Let's just say 2.6 or 20 points out of 30 for this practice test. Let's listen to it one more time.
your best friends forever because they understand you in and out. They share the same workplace with you. They know the pressures of the work. They help you with the work.
Now, in the beginning, I think you need a little bit more focused topic statement in the beginning that can help frame, I think, the key points of your response. And then it gives a direction of your response. It makes it a little easier to understand.
Example is when you have some issues going on with your work, they'll try to sort it out. They'll make you laugh and they
No, they make you. Who is they? Your coworkers? So I would be more specific instead of using the pronoun.
make you headstrong.
And the other thing is they're make you, but with personal experience, Rashmi, your purpose here is to explain examples from your own ideas. You don't need to talk directly to your audience. So I don't think that second person point of view is not the most appropriate point of view for this kind of speaking
The
task.
second reason is when you are in some issues, they know it.
The second reason is that, but the second reason why, so you need to take this second idea and connect it back to the purpose of the speaking task so that it's a little more clear what it is that you're speaking about.
Right away and they help you support either it is a professional or personal issue. They try to make everything good and they try to solve it. They are always by your side. 8 hours is a very long time to stay together.
So I'm not even sure what the speaking topic is. So what you want to do is when you're doing these kinds of practice tests, you want to repeat some of the key words from the speaking prompt and repeat those in various parts of your response so that the connection of ideas is very clear. So I think you can definitely make a lot of improvements with the topic development. So you need a little bit more focused thesis or topic statement in the beginning. Then as you move to each reason, you want to better connect those ideas back to the purpose of the speaking prompt. So those are some of my comments based on your performance there. Language use, I think you should probably study a little bit more what I call syntactic variety. You have very basic, very simple grammar. You tend to use short, simple sentences, but you want to combine ideas more using compound and complex sentences. So I think you can definitely work in that area also. Delivery, I think one area is you can make improvements with your intonation. I think that will also help your intelligibility. All right? Let's listen to your integrated speaking task number 2. So you have reading, listening, speaking. This is more campus related. So I'm gonna look at the rubric beginning at about 3, and let's see how you did with this one. So here we go.
The man expresses his opinion on the announcement of scheduling with academic advisor. He thinks it's a very positive thing because
Okay, what I would do here is it's not just the man expressing his opinion, but the reading passage is explaining a campus announcement about a new university policy. And then in the listening passage, the man reacts to this new policy. So I think when you're creating that introduction, you want to state the main point of both the reading and the listening passage. I think that's going to better frame your response. So we need to have context. What exactly is the campus announcement? What is it? So lay that out first and then tell us what the man's opinion is of the policy.
through this way they get students get the help from the advisor, and which will make them effective in choosing a right course for the future. The examples he gave is one of the some of the students in his class didn't take history 1 but was taking history 2,
Okay.
which when they ask questions is causes distraction in the class. And the second reason he gives is that
So secondly, the man also believes or says that this policy, so remember when you go to the second reason, you want to explain how the man reacts and what his opinion is regarding this.
he tried to take a class in history of rock and roll, but the advisor gave him an information that it is not a requirement and it doesn't help him in the future if you want to go for public policy.
If he wants to go public policy, I'm not even sure what you're trying to say.
So he thinks that counseling with the academic advisor is very good. The man expresses.
Okay, so I think in this one, I'm going to put you in a similar category, probably. I'm going to put you maybe 2.3 to 2.5, maybe 18 to 19 points out of 30. So again, you need a little bit better connection of ideas here. So we have a reading passage and then we have a listening passage. So the reading passage is explaining the announcement about the new policy, and then the man is reacting to that policy. So we need a little bit better connection of ideas there. So I think you can definitely improve your topic development, and I have a lot of lessons that can help you in this area also. And I think going back to delivery, the same thing I said before, you're having some problems with your intonation. You want to vary your tone a little more than you are right now. And here is your integrated speaking practice test 3. This is a reading, listening, speaking, academic. So you have a reading passage, then you have the lecturers giving maybe some examples to further illustrate the idea. So let's see how you framed this particular practice test from the beginning.
Compassionate consumerism is when you buy an item, some of the amount spent on it is given.
No, you said compassionate consumerism is. But where is all this information coming from? You're just explaining the facts, but you're not framing anything. You need an introduction. So if you say, well, the reading passage gives the definition of consumerism or compassionate consumerism, then the speaker in the lecture gives some examples to further illustrate the idea. Then there's a little bit better relationship of ideas there. So you need to more clearly frame your ideas.
Compassionate consumerism is when you buy an item, some of the
You say is when you buy, but again, using that you point of view, it makes it impersonal, it makes the tone informal, and it doesn't sound like a summary when you're using you. So when you're summarizing reading and listening passages, you want to use the third person, the he, she, or it point of view, not the first person point of view.
amount spent on it is given away for charity. This is mostly effective on very young shoppers, and most of the businesses are thriving on it. Example of these businesses are ABC shoes. When they say that when
The example of these are when they say that, but who is saying all this? So once you've explained compassionate consumerism, according to the reading passage, you've given what the definition is and what it means. Then you'll say something like, furthermore, the professor in the lecture gives one or two specific examples to further illustrate this idea. So you want to make sure that as you're acknowledging this information from the reading and the listening passage, you're using more voice markers, which exactly do that. You're letting us know who is saying all this information.
you buy one shoe pair, they donate the other one to those
Now, who is they? They donate. You're talking about customers, consumers?
who are in need for it. These ABC shoes are normal flat
But these issues, according to the professor, are
slip-on shoes. So they are just normal, but because of this technique, they are being on sales. They are being on higher sales. So the second example for this is Bob's Coffee.
so the second example that the professor uses is, so again, you need to embed those voice markers in there so we know who is saying this. Remember that you're trying to create here an objective tone. So the way that you make an objective tone is to include or to make attribution to either the author in the reading passage or the speaker in the lecture.
This coffee, Bob's Coffee, it is a normal coffee, but it says that when you buy a coffee, the amount
Again, when consumers or customers buy coffee, the professor explains,
some of the amount is sent to non-profit organizations which help preserve South African forests.
okay, so this is the same problem as before. So generally, you need better structure. You need better ideas here, right? You need to make sure everything is connected together better than what it is right now. This is going to make it easier for other people to understand your ideas. Okay, so I think that this is similar to the previous one. I'm going to give you a score maybe 2.16 out of 4, 17 points out of 30. So you need to figure out how to organize your responses better. You can use what we call templates, but be careful. I will show you some templates that you can use, or at least you can see how to organize it. But ideally, you need to develop your own templates so the TOEFL doesn't recognize them and see that you're trying to memorize somebody else's way of structuring these ideas. But also with your delivery, you need to work on that intonation again. That's the same thing as before. So I think that my score is pretty accurate, probably right around 17, 18 points out of 30. And finally, we are at speaking task number 4. So this is listening, speaking, academic. So you've listened to a lecture from a professor, and then you're going to try to re-explain this information. Okay, here we go.
Migration is generally seen in
Now, I notice you got a little one in the background, maybe your child, and you know what? That is very good practice for the TOEFL, because when you take the TOEFL exam, there's usually a lot of background noise at the testing center. So this is a good idea to actually practice with either the TV on or a little kid in the background making noise or even recording something at a Starbucks. This is good practice because it helps you try to concentrate with these distractions, which kind of simulates what happens at the testing center. Okay, let's listen to this.
Human aggression is generally seen in our daily lives. Aggression is nothing but a negative.
So, but you just start off with the facts, but you might say the lecturer or the professor in the lecture explains some important points about human aggression. Or if it's a definition and then an explanation, say in the lecture, the professor gives a definition of human aggression and then presents some examples to further clarify the issue. So again, you need to frame what's happening in the response. You can't just start off with a whole bunch of information here. You got to prepare us for this information. That means you start off with more general ideas, then you get more specific as you go through your response.
Negative behavior either caused by psychological or physical damage. It generally has two theories. One is evolution, in which says that aggression.
Okay, so then if there's two theories about human aggression, then you might say the lecturer presents a definition about human aggression and then explains two theories to further explain it or something. So you frame it like that, then you start off giving the definition first, and then you explain the two theories.
Followed through generations, through genetics. Like men are more aggressive when compared to females.
So men are more aggressive, according to the professor, than their female counterparts. So again, you need more voice markers in there, Rashmi, because as you put the voice markers in there, it marks it as a summary and it sounds like a summary and it gives it a more formal tone. And that is the kind of tone that you're trying to create with this speaking test.
To show the dominance effect, and they say, and this theory states that children born for more dominant men are more aggressive compared to others. And the second theory is social learning theory, which says that aggression is not.
So then you say, then the professor presents the example, the social learning theory, which suggests, and make sure as you're explaining the ideas, you use these reporting verbs. Reporting verbs are things like the professor explains, the professor suggests, or the speaker argues or contends or illustrates. You need those reporting verbs and you need to name the professor or the speaker in the lecture, or however you want to name the person. You need to make sure you include the name along with these reporting verbs and use simple present tense reporting verbs, and that will make it sound more like a summary and it better organizes your idea.
Innate or instinctual. It is seen in houses which has violence, or even though the house is calm, aggression can be learned through. Human aggression is generally seen in our daily lives. Aggression is nothing but a negative behavior caused by psychological or physical damage. It generally has two theories. One is evolution.
Okay, so I think we're in pretty good shape here. I can give you a score here. I don't have to listen to the whole thing again here. Yeah, I'm going to put you maybe at about 2.3 out of 4, 18 points out of 30. So based on the 4 responses, I'm going to put you probably maybe right around maybe 18 to 19 points out of 30. That's probably a pretty good estimation of what your speaking skills are right now. The next step is, because of this lesson that you purchased, you will have access to my online TOEFL course for the next 30 days. And we need to kind of figure out what what specific lessons can you work on that's going to help you? So one of the first things we need to do when we do a 1-hour Skype lesson, I want you to remind me on this because I may forget. I want you to do the diagnostic pretest for vowel and consonant sounds. This is the first thing I want you to do, and then we can figure out which lessons you need to focus on the most. Now, I think also for your pronunciation, you should do this diagnostic pretest, lesson number 25. And again, we can isolate specific lessons that you can focus on to improve your pronunciation. Okay, that's the first thing you want to do when we meet for an hour. So that way for the next month, you can study all these recommended lessons that are going to help you to speak more clearly. Okay, let's go to the speaking section of the course, and I can give you some ideas on what you can work on here. Okay, where are we here? Okay, I see it right here. So this is really probably the most important thing you can work on right here, which is master lesson number 1, independent speaking strategies. I think that's a really good area for you right now. So that's the first thing you want to take a look at. And you can look at some of these other lessons as needed, but that's the one that's very, very important. Okay, let's go to integrated, I think. The TOEFL Integrated Writing Strategies Master Lesson. This is also very important for you. So in this one, it'll give you example responses and show you how to organize ideas. So I want you to take a look at that. I think how to make your speaking more coherent. This is very important for both independent and integrated speaking. I want you to take a look at that. Lesson 6.1, paraphrasing with voice markers. So I don't want to give you too much here. You can work on other things as needed, but at least focus on those lessons I just outlined here, and that'll definitely help you with your overall speaking fluency. Okay? I'm now looking at your integrated writing practice test that you sent me. And I scored this at 2.0 out of 5, 14 points out of 30, according to the rubrics here. So if you look at 2, you have inappropriate lack of details, inadequate organization or connection of ideas, limited development of ideas. So those, I think the organization and the development you can definitely improve on. Right? So let's take a look here. So if we look at the word count, I mean, you can see the paragraphs aren't very developed, right? So we go to review. Yeah, we got 225 words. What you're trying to do here is probably 450 to even 500. At least those are students who I've been teaching in the past. Once you get higher than 25 to 30 points on the writing section, typically write more than 450. So what is it exactly that you can do that can actually improve the organization of this essay? One way to get closer to that 450 words is to include an introduction that's more developed. So if you look what you wrote here, you can contrast it with the edited version of your paragraph, right? So you can see here, we're looking at maybe 51 words, right? But then this paragraph, we have 130 words. And I even have a more specific thesis here. Notice how I got rid of this. I don't even use this. So compared to what you wrote, I said, when students attend college, they will have to get used to completing assignments for their general and specialized courses. One common assignment often administered by professors is a research project. To complete this multi-page complex writing assignment, some students prefer to conduct scholarly research on the internet by accessing password-protected library databases. In contrast, other students use printed materials such as books and articles that they can find by going to the library. So notice all of this is mere just raising the topic. I talked about college, I talked about courses, assignments, research projects, then I kind of restated the two different sides of the question, and now here we have the thesis. In my opinion, printed materials are better research choices than those on the internet because I can give them subject-verb agreement. I'm going to say they are easy to verify. No, I guess it's okay. It is easy. It is easy to verify their authenticity. These printed materials are much more convenient to use, and these written texts have more details about the research. Therefore, I agree that printed materials are much more useful than research documents on the internet. So here, you kind of had a thesis here, but you didn't include this last point. So this is what I did. I included this third point in the thesis, right, that you see here. And then I put, therefore, I agree that printed materials are much more useful than research documents on the internet. So that's the first step, is to develop your first paragraph really by maybe 3 times. So now that the first paragraph is 130 words, I mean, it's going to be much easier to get closer to that 450 to 500 word limit. Okay, let's take a look at the next paragraph. In your paragraph here, again, if you look at your development here, not very developed, you got 68 words. Now, I took your ideas and I more fully developed them so you can get an idea of what you're trying to do. And here we got 152 words here. So I took some of your ideas here, but the part that was weak was this line where you said they are published after proper verification. Only people with extensive knowledge can write them. I thought that this needed to be developed more because this is actually the argument you're trying to make in this paragraph. So here's how I added to what you wrote. Firstly, one benefit of using printed books and articles is that it is easy to authenticate these works. For example, last semester, I checked out a microbiology book at the library so I could conduct some research from a biochemistry class. I could quickly find on the inside cover of the book several important points: publisher, date of publication, author, and author's credentials and educational background. Having this information readily at my fingertips made it easy for me to determine that this book was a credible and reliable source that I could use for my research. In contrast, conducting research solely on the internet can be risky, as all information in the internet may not be genuine and can be easily modified by unauthorized personnel. Anyone without experience can put content. You put stuff, and that's a very weak word. I would not use things like stuff or things because it shows your vocabulary is very basic. So we have anyone without experience can put content on the internet. Therefore, unlike many internet websites, it is much easier to verify the authenticity of printed materials. So that would be what you could do with this particular paragraph. So when we compare your second paragraph, I took your ideas here, expanded them out a little bit more. So you have a word count of 57, and I basically doubled that. So if you look at what I've done here, we have 113 words. Okay, so notice here, you didn't really have a topic here. I think taken everywhere, referring to them as easy, to me, that's convenient. That's why I changed your thesis up here and I included this. These printed materials are much more convenient to use. So I added that in your thesis and then I'm referring to it again here. So here's how your modified paragraph looks. Now, notice how you're using things like example, colon, when traveling. You don't want to do that. You do something like this, for example, and then just put a comma like this, and then say, when traveling in flight, we won't have access to the internet, but a book or printed material can be easy to carry. So you don't want to just put example and then a colon. That's not, in at least formal writing, I wouldn't do that. Okay, so here's how I added to what you already wrote. Secondly, printed materials are more convenient to use than those found on the internet. For instance, when I was working on the research for my biochemistry class, now notice this. What is this? This. So I brought this idea up here, research for biochemistry. Now, why do you think I mentioned exactly that same thing instead of moving to a whole nother idea? So I did this because you want to show depth and complexity of thought to your writing. So instead of bringing up a different example in every paragraph, you refer to the same one in each paragraph, then develop it even further. That's going to show more depth to your idea. So that's why I did that. Secondly, printed materials are more convenient to use than those found on the internet. For instance, when I was working on the research for my biochemistry class, I was able to read my research articles that I had checked out. I checked out maybe from my library, even while I was flying on a plane. In addition, I do not have a reliable wireless internet connection at home. Therefore, having my printed research materials with me made it easy to even conduct my research while I was at home. Had I only relied on the internet for my research, I would not have been able to do my research during my flight and during my studies at home. Notice here, I could have done this if I had only relied, I could have done, but by omitting, this shows a little bit more advanced grammar, the way that I did it here. So had I only relied, we're talking about what's called a past impossible condition, right? I would not have been able to do my research during my flight and during my studies at home. So that's what I would do to that paragraph. And this is what you wrote in your third paragraph, and it's just not enough. So I'm expanding what you wrote. So you kind of ran out of time, it looks like. And you're probably saying to yourself, you're saying, Michael, there's no way I can write 500 words in 30 minutes. And I'm telling you that there is. Many students do it. Many of my online TOEFL course students can do this at the end of maybe 1 or 2 months of writing practice. They can do it. Think about this. A lot of people said that athletes could not run a mile under 4 minutes. And what are they doing right now? I think the world record for the mile is 3:41. Similarly, many people have said that it's impossible for anyone to run a marathon. I think a marathon 26.2 miles or 42 kilometers. They said it's impossible to run a marathon under 2 hours. And guess what? They've now broke the 2-hour barrier. So this is your goal. Your goal is to try to write 450 to 500 words in 30 minutes, and you can practice. And that's your goal. You want to practice until you can do this. And once you can do this, then that's telling you that you're ready to take the TOEFL IBT. So this paragraph was a disaster for you. You only had 29 words. So I took your idea, and then I'm going to develop it to over 100 words. And then you can see what it looks like here. So it's 124 words, right? Okay, so let's take a look here. Now, what I did is I changed the topic sentence slightly. There's 2 points. Textbooks contain more detail, more recent experimental information. Yeah, so they contain more detail, more recent experimental information. These are 2 ideas. So, and I've illustrated that in this paragraph. So what does it sound like? Thirdly, Printed textbooks often contain more detail and more recent experimental information on academic topics compared to those materials found on the internet. To illustrate, the book about biochemistry that I've already referred to contained 693 pages and use passive voice here, was divided, or maybe active is good. So yeah, the book divided the topic into 25 separate chapters. It is more difficult to find this type of detail on the internet, however. In addition, recently published articles contain experimental information that is especially useful for those scholars conducting past postbachelor study research. For instance, I found an article in the Journal of American Medicine that supplemented one of the chapters in the biochem book that I checked out. Hence, I was able to get recent information on my topic that was not more than 3 months old. So there you go. So this is what it looks like to write over 450 words. So you have this first paragraph, you have your second paragraph here, you have this third one, and then you have the fourth one, and then you get to your conclusion. So if we compare your conclusion along with my conclusion, I think generally you have the right idea. I just developed it a bit more. So I said, finally, I hereby believe that printed material is easy to access information for research purposes compared to solely relying on the internet. I put in as much as these types of materials are more verifiable, convenient, and maybe detailed. And that's it. So that would be, if you made the changes that I showed you here, your writing is going to go from 14 points all the way to 30 points out of 30. So for you, I think that you need some organizational and developmental changes. So based on your independent writing task, I'm going to take a look at some specific lessons that I think can help you improve your writing, because I want to do this while it's still fresh in my mind. I just read your entire essay. I commented on it. So I think that you can probably improve your vocabulary. You remember how you said stuff instead of content? I think that you can do better with some of your language choices, I think, with your vocabulary. So I recommend that you learn the words in vocabulary lesson number 3, lesson number 4, number 5, and number 6. So that gives you almost 2,000 college level words. It'll probably take you about 2 or 3 months to learn these words, but I really believe if you can put these words into your long-term memory, you will have a much, much fuller range of expression in both your speaking and your writing. Okay, let's go over to grammar. So what are some grammar things that you can work on based on what you just did there? I think that you can take a look at maybe lesson number 3 and 4, lesson 4.1, lesson 5, lesson 6, lesson 6.1, lesson 7, 8, and 9. So this will give you what we call practice with more advanced type structures in your writing. I think lesson number 11, subject verb inversions, is probably a good lesson for you right now. And what else here? I think sentence variety, lesson number 26, and then 26.2. Both of these are good lessons for you. You had some punctuation problems, so you can look at lesson 29, the semicolon, colon, dash, period, and so on. Make sure, especially the colon versus the semicolon, make sure you understand how to use those. Okay, let's go to the writing part of my course now. I try not to give you too many things here, so I think this particular lesson here, let me make sure it takes you to the lesson I'm looking for. Yeah, this one. Yeah, this independent writing strategies, this is probably the main lesson I'd like you to take a look at. It'll show you the structure, including thesis statements, including development of the different body paragraphs, so you have an idea of how you can develop your writing a little bit more. So that's a very, very important lesson for you. I think this one, lesson 5.5, how to show depth and complexity of thought. I think that's a good lesson for you right now. And then lesson 5.6, writing the perfect paragraph. So those are things you can look at, I think, either vocabulary or grammar or writing lessons that you can study right now based on the independent writing practice test that you sent me. Hi, Rashmi, this is Michael. And with the integrated practice test you sent me, I'm going to score you at 2.5 out of 5, 17 points out of 30. So if you look at the rubrics, I looked at where it says in the two area, says you have not demonstrated understanding of how the information in the lecture is connected to the information with the reading passage. I mean, you've kind of shown that the lecture is contradicting the points in the reading passage, right? But you kind of assume or imply what the reading passage is saying without directly saying it. So in this paragraph, the lecture and reading contrast and how all businesses can succeed by conducting regular meetings, training employees in thorough reading, and you might say something like following the steps in the writing process if you wanted to. In my example introduction here, I put, for businesses to be successful, the reading passage recommends that all employees participate in all meetings, read all the materials, and bypass the steps of the writing process when writing reports, but the lecture questions the efficiency of these suggestions. So we're kind of showing what the 3 points are in the reading, and then how the lecture disagrees with these 3 points. So if you look at your next paragraph, you have the lecture contradicts the reading, stating limited number of meetings that need to be conducted instead of lengthy meetings, short meetings with appropriate information. You want to say are productive, whereas meetings beyond 90 minutes are unproductive and are a waste of time. Wasting time in lengthy introduction can distract employees. The problem is we know what the lecture is saying, but you're not referring to the information in the reading passage. If you compare with my paragraph, which is developed a lot more than yours, notice how all of this information talks about the reading. Actually, it talks about the listening passage, right? And then this information talks about the reading, so you want to make sure you're discussing both. First, the professor claims that the number of employee meetings should be limited and short. According to him, meetings longer than 60 minutes might be unproductive since workers usually stop paying attention. Notice how you said 90 minutes. It was actually 60 minutes there. So be careful that you don't change the meaning of any ideas. He recommends that instead of calling a meeting, workers should try to deal with issues using emails or making phone calls. In addition, they should either decline going to the meeting or inform participants that they will leave the meeting after 60 minutes. However, the author in the reading passage argues that companies need to schedule as many meetings as possible since they are an excellent way of dealing with problems and staying current with modern work-related technology. So make sure that you don't forget this information. And notice how we state the author in the reading passage argues. So you put that voice marker in there to acknowledge that information. So in this case, your next paragraph, the lecture also states, instead of reading lengthy materials, focusing on the important information is vital. Focusing on the main ideas of the documents, skipping irrelevant objects can be the best use of time. Concentrating on examples which gives us main ideas must be followed. Okay, but still, you haven't really said much about the reading passage here. So compare my paragraph to yours. So we're talking about the lecture all the way to here, and then we talk about the reading passage here. So it should be very clear when you're talking about the lecture and when you're talking about the reading passage, and to score higher, you need to devote more time to discussing the information in the reading passage. And I think the same thing works here. Lecture states that following steps in writing process can save time while writing reports. Perfecting every sentence is a time-consuming process. Instead of following the path of steps like outlining the report, then roughing, you want to not roughing the draft, but then revising or editing the rough draft and finally revising it in the end to check for errors in phrasing or sentencing, but you're still not giving enough information about the reading. So you notice again, what I did is a little bit different from what you did, is we have information with the lecture, and then we also have information from the reading here. So that sounds like lastly, to help employees become more efficient writers, the professor suggests that they follow the steps of the writing process. When it comes to writing reports, the professor explains that workers should not initially try to write in perfect and complete sentences since it will take too long to complete the reports. Instead, for the sake of saving time, he proposes to make an outline, write a quick draft. This is where you had some trouble, where you said roughing the draft here, but write a quick draft and finally revise and correct the mistakes. However, the reading passage states the report should be written all at once since separating the steps in the writing process wastes time. So what this tells me is you understand what you've listened to and what you've read, but you're still not completely explaining the information from the reading passage like you should. So that's where you can improve. And you didn't really include a conclusion. Now, if I'm not saying it's necessary, but if you do, it doesn't need to be very long. Ultimately, the lecture casts doubt on the reading passage by stating that having frequent and long meetings, reading all reports in detail, and writing reports all at once will in fact make businesses less efficient and consequently less successful. So this is how you can end the essay, by restating the points from the lecture and the reading passage. So what you wrote was roughly maybe 175 words. If you follow the structure and the development that I'm showing you, which means developing points from the reading passage a lot more fully than what you did, your essay now goes maybe to 350 words instead of 175 words. All right? Okay, so the question is at my website, to help you improve your integrated writing, what can you do? How do you improve in that area? So let's go to the writing part of my course. We're going to step 6, talks about target and improve your writing weaknesses. Okay, let's go to the integrated portion here. This is probably the best lesson that you can use. It's called lesson number 9, TOEFL integrated writing strategy. So really focus on this lesson. Lesson 12.2, paraphrasing with voice markers. This is a problem that's a recurring problem with both integrated speaking and integrated writing. You want to make sure that in this case, you have more voice markers with the reading passages as you talk about the reading passage. And I think that's probably good enough. Probably good enough to answer for right now. Those are lessons that you can take a look at. All right, so thank you for doing the integrated writing practice test. Also, in this video, I went over your independent writing practice. I also went over 4 different speaking tasks that you sent me. So hopefully, by watching this video, you have a pretty good idea on why you received the scores you did, and then how you can do better and create better, more organized and developed responses. And then I even recommended specific lessons in my online TOEFL course to help you improve.